Napoleon Bonaparte was one of the most important people in all of history. To some, he was a tyrant who hijacked the government to bring power to himself and acted just as the king the French previously overthrew. To others, he was a champion of the revolution to spread ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity. But he is indisputably one of the best tactical generals in human history. He was so influential, we literally named the wars he fought in after him. So thinking of that brings up the question, what if Napoleon had not been defeated? What if France won the Napoleonic Wars? One of the easiest ways to make this happen is a French victory during the Battle of Trafalgar. The only way to make this happen is a change of tactics. In our timeline, Admiral Nelson turned his ships toward the French and Spanish to cut their fleet into chunks. This at the time was considered a bad strategy, so in this timeline, Nelson chooses not to do it. Besides that, the French and Spanish had the superior navy in battle, so they would defeat the British fleet. This would destroy most of the Navy's good ships and open up Britain to French invasion. This would start with France conquering the Isle of Wight, and Spain would invade Cornwall. French ships would also bombard ports and make it seem like they were going to do an invasion from the south. British forces would still be focused on Cornwall and push back the Spanish, but instead, Napoleon would send ships to the Thames estuary. From here, he would invade along the river to London and absolutely destroy the British army there. With this, France would force Britain to surrender, and from here, America would formally join in an alliance with France and would invade British Canada. From here, France would force Britain to give Scotland and Ireland independence as French client states, as well as France keeping the Isle of Wight and Spain taking Cornwall as a protectorate. But by this time, Napoleon would never end up at war with Prussia and wouldn't establish the Confederation of the Rhine, which left Germany broken up for quite a while. He would also take control of the rest of Italy and set it up into a group of larger client states. Now France would also take British India and South Africa. By now, Napoleon would take down his remaining enemies and become the master of Europe. Napoleon would also take British holdings in the Caribbean, and with the French military freed up, he could reconquer Haiti. By the 1830s, Napoleon would remain respectful as the Emperor of France and rule over Europe, the Caribbean, India, and South Africa. Napoleon would be living the life of an emperor instead of a prisoner, so he would certainly live longer. Many of France's enemies would accept the status quo and adopt commercial ties with France, yet England would remain an enemy and look for any opportunity to fight France. Napoleon would remain leader until his death in 1834 at the age of 65, and he would leave his crown to his son, Napoleon II. Since he would never fight against an Austrian battalion in the cold, he would never get pneumonia, and he would live longer in this timeline. He would, however, leave a campaign on the British Isles. You see, with a successor of Napoleon being rather young, England would hope they could become more powerful by invading Scotland, while France is weak. But like his father, he would sail to Scotland and join forces with the army to fight in a brutal conflict. But he would lack the speed of his father, and after the defeat of English forces, he would be assassinated by the English military. With this, the succession line would continue as Napoleon III becomes the next emperor of the French Empire. He would implement his overseas ambitions in North America. During the American Civil War, France would support the Union, while England might consider helping the Confederacy. And America would be fine with the French war against Mexico, so Mexico would be added as a colony in the French Empire. But after this, he would begin French operations in Africa. France would lead expeditions into Central Africa and start colonizing the coast of Algeria. With France already holding South Africa, it was widely believed that France should conquer a whole portion of the continent for themselves. This would scare Britain, so they would begin their own colonial expeditions on the Gold Coast. While Napoleon III was keen on beginning new relations with England, the majority of people in England wanted war between the two. English forces would soon attack French lands in Africa and attack soldiers, which would spiral out and start World War III in 1898, with England against France. Okay, so the sides in this upcoming war would be tricky to project, but mainly it would result in France, Russia, Spain, Prussia, and the United States fighting against England, Portugal, Japan, Sweden, Mexican rebels, and maybe some defeated Confederate rebels in the United States. Unlike the previous wars, this conflict has new technology implemented into it that would certainly make this war the most influential and bloody in this world's history. But how would this go? That is beyond me. But it's very clear that this world would have been much different if Napoleon had come on top.